Have you ever tried to explain what you've been through only to be met with blank stares, awkward silence, or worse, a dismissive shrug? Maybe they said, "He seems so nice," or maybe you're just going through a rough patch. Today, we're talking about the heartbreak of trying to explain narcissistic abuse to friends and family who've never experienced it, and the emotional risk that comes with opening up. We're going to explore why it's so hard for others to understand and how to protect yourself from the hurt of not being believed. When somebody says, "I'm being abused," I think people imagine bruises, chaos, obvious cruelty. But narcissistic abuse doesn't always look that way. It shows up in manipulation, gaslighting, control masked as charm, and quiet isolation. So when you try to explain what's happening, it often doesn't sound convincing to someone who's never been through it. They might say, "He's just stressed out," or "You're overthinking." And suddenly, instead of feeling supported, you feel exposed, embarrassed, doubting yourself all over again. It's one of the most crushing moments to finally speak your truth, only to have it dismissed. In undercurrent, Annie reaches a point where she doesn't even try anymore. Every time she even hinted at the truth, how maybe Santino chipped away at her confidence, how things just didn't feel quite right at home, people would say, "Marriage takes work," or "I think you're being a little picky." So she stayed quiet. She smiled, and when she was supposed to, she would nod. But deep inside, she thought that maybe that's what narcissistic abuse does. It isolates you, not just physically, but emotionally. You stop reaching out, you stop explaining, because every failed attempt, it chips away at your voice, doesn't it? So why is it that people just don't understand? Here's the truth. Most people don't understand narcissistic abuse because they've never seen it, lived it, or even questioned someone they thought was so nice. And frankly, I don't think they want to. People are often more comfortable blaming the one who's hurting than questioning the one that's causing the harm in cases like this. It's just easier, cleaner, but that doesn't make their reaction right. You're not too sensitive, you're not overreacting, and you're not wrong for trying to make sense of something that is designed to confuse you. There's another layer of pain I want to talk about, and it's one that's not often spoken about, especially not early in the healing journey. It's the moment when you finally muster up the courage to speak up, maybe to a therapist, maybe to a marriage counselor or a trusted friend, and they just don't get it. Why is that? Sometimes it's just because narcissistic abuse doesn't look like abuse to the untrained eye. A skilled narcissist can present as charming, generous, and even attentive. So when you describe the emotional confusion or the subtle control, a counselor who's not trained in this specific form of abuse might actually make things worse for you. They might suggest you work on your communication. They might urge you to meet your partner's needs more fully. And slowly, their well-meaning advice starts to sound a lot like, "This is your fault." That kind of misunderstanding isn't just unhelpful, it's traumatic. And even when you do recognize it for what it is, and you finally use the word narcissist, you risk being dismissed yet again. For a long time, the word narcissist was misunderstood. People thought it just meant someone who's self-absorbed, maybe a little vain, full of themselves. So when you say, "I think I'm dealing with narcissistic abuse," the response might be a shrug, a joke, or worse, a judgment that you're being overly dramatic. The truth is, there are countless ways in which someone in the grip of the narcissist can be harmed again, and that's by trying to explain it, by being too honest, or speaking to someone who just hasn't lived it or learned about it. So the question is, should you try to explain? There's no one-size-fits-all answer. Sometimes it's brave and healing to share your truth. Sometimes it's wiser and safer to hold it close. If you do decide to open up, start with someone who you really trust, someone who listens more than they speak, and go in knowing that whether or not they understand doesn't define the truth about your experience. And if you choose not to explain, that's okay too. You don't owe anybody your story, especially if sharing it puts your emotional safety at risk. If this episode touched something in you, and if you've ever walked away from a conversation feeling smaller, more unsure, or just quietly devastated, please know you're not alone. It's not a failure to be misunderstood. And the people who truly care about you, they're going to start listening when you speak softly, not just when you shout. You don't have to convince anyone to believe in order for your truth to be real. And if you found your way here today, maybe, just maybe, you're already beginning to believe in yourself again. That's the beginning of freedom. For those new to my podcast, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Kyle Hackley, attorney and author of Undercurrent, a story about Annie who breaks free from her narcissistic marriage. But Annie isn't just one person. Annie is anyone who has ever experienced narcissistic abuse. Are You Annie is a space to hear you, to validate you, and to walk this healing journey with you. Here, you are not alone. And I want you to remember that you are stronger than you think. I want you to be tenacious and never give up on what's important to you. Thank you so much for staying on this journey with me, and I will see you next time. Bye.